1 second. Okay, and then go ahead, Nicole, and please introduce yourselves to this amazing group of Haas students.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. For those that I have not had the pleasure of meeting at Haas, my name is Nicole Beauvais. I am the recruiting and manager for Gallo Sales Company. If you haven't heard of us, I'll give you a quick, brief introduction. But yeah, I've been in the recruiting world for 2 years now at the company. I did not have the pleasure of going to Cal, but I was in the UC system. I graduated from UC Davis, played soccer there for 4 years because debt is a real thing. And we actually played you guys a lot in preseason. Your team was super good at athletics, and I love your guys' hills. So big fan of your university. So excited to talk to you today, especially as we're kind of aligned with that business world. Really, we're going to be focusing, friends, on selling yourself in a virtual era. I was telling Elizabeth, this is so key right now, right? How do you stand out? How do you get those things? You guys are such a cool range from freshman to senior year. So really want to align on the opportunities to make yourself stand out of a crowd in a competitive environment. And set you guys up for success when finding those cool opportunities come graduation and internships. So with that being said, on the next slide, we're just kind of run through a quick introduction on my company. You might be like, what is Nicole's background? If you're not familiar, that's totally fine. So you might be like, Gallo who? So we are the largest wine manufacturer by global volume shares. We're also the largest family-owned and operated winery in the world, for those of you that didn't know. We were made and established by 2 brothers in 1933, and we are now 4 generations into our Gallo family, which is kind of fun for a company culture, fun thing. We import and export to over 93 different countries internationally, which is cool. And then fun fact, 1 in 3 bottles through any register at a grocery store, on-premise, restaurants is a Gallo product, which a lot of people don't know. So we have over 120 brands in our portfolio. As you can kind of see from the images behind me. Feel free to put in the chat too if you recognize any, if you're over 21 or have ever seen it. Would love to know what you guys have ever experienced. So my job is to create experiences for people to really enjoy and make memories over a dinner table, which is kind of fun. So here's some of our brands, like I said, behind me, and also that are pretty well known. Again, throw in the chat. This is going to be very engaging, friends. Would love to see what you recognize, if any. So we'll give that a second, or if anyone wants to come off mute and say one that they recognize. So happy for it. Oh, we see some Barefoot. Love it. Chloe knows New Amsterdam. So happy you pointed those out. So Barefoot, Cleo, is the #1 brand in the world. We just signed a partnership with Black Eyed Peas to do augmented reality concerts in COVID because while concerts were shut down, we put them in the grocery stores with an app. Kind of fun innovation project. La Marca, love to see it. Apothic, yeah, absolutely. You guys are, yeah, these are some fun ones. Lots of A's. Love that. Yeah, these are great brands. So happy you guys recognize that. Super fun. Like I said, we just went through an acquisition of over $1 billion. I didn't say this, so it's not like what I said, but we did, and we acquired 30 new brands. So kind of fun facts about a little behind the scenes of who we are and who's talking to you today. And then when it comes to getting ready, why is this credible? Why is anything I say you should take into account? One, like I mentioned, I'm on the recruiting team for 2 years. We do over 1,000 interviews a season for our company. Our average tenure is a listed of 19-year career length on average. So a lot of people like to work for us, right? Because it's kind of a runway for a strong career in the business world. With that being said, I've gotten a lot of experience seeing a lot of people interview for our internships, which competitively we only let 3 to 5 people have from Northern California all season, which is kind of fun. But really want to give you tips to stand out. Maybe wine industry isn't your thing and you guys want to do XYZ medical sales or just being management, right? Like so many fun tracks. Whatever your industry is, I want to really set you guys up for success when pitching yourself. So from a sales perspective, getting ready, want to prepare you for the future. So this may look familiar as I feel like this is literally our desktop screen right now as we're talking. The world is a little weird, right, Haas students? We're in an era of virtual reality. And we've been having to do this for a little over, what are we at, 2 years almost? So kind of diving in, how do we stand out in this environment? How do we bring our authentic selves to the table when speaking and absolutely leaving and shutting our laptops off and feeling like we had a really good interview, right? That's really the goal. Also, how do you stand out at career fairs when handshake is a 10-minute session to really stand out and leave a good impression with someone? So I want to kind of talk through those opportunities, kind of starting with a brief overview. As most of you know, resume really helps get you in the door. So what should that include? Education, right? Any internships you've had. Really, this list, I'm not going to read through all of it, but what you really should be speaking to is any experience. As a recruiter, what I want to see is what has Chloe been doing in her 2 years at Berkeley, right? 4 years. How has she been involved? What has she been spending her time doing? Even if you're not the president of your sorority, right, or fraternity, totally fine. What work experience have you had? What have you been doing? What class curriculum, right? The biggest thing is starting with education. Sometimes we see people add things from high school on. That's okay, but I think overall we want to avoid high school things and see how involved did so and so get in college. Because if the thought process is if they're involved in college at this level and they took on increased responsibility, especially in the business world, how much more will they do for my company, right? How involved can they be? How successful were they? Do they have any measurements that I can see? Were they promoted within their time in any roles? Did other people see things in them for potential that I can already gauge as a foundation? So that's really why the resume can stand out. Anything that you do, I wouldn't say you have to necessarily be top because there's only a few positions for presidents, right? But work experience is also equally important. That's something you can totally speak to on the resume. So highly recommend those things when putting them in order. Education at the top. We'll kind of talk about that slightly. I want to focus more on the interviews for you, but the resume is going to be your backbone to refer to help you set up a really good curriculum of content to talk through in your interview. So you do want to include you go to UC Berkeley, right? Highly competitive, well done getting into this university. That's a big deal. So make sure you're adding that to the top of the list, which I'm sure all of you Haas students are, and putting Haas, right? That's a big deal. So one thing people tend to leave off, which is in the little details, is their graduation month and year. Please do not put that at the bottom of the resume. Please put that at the very top, because when I'm running through the resumes after the career fair, right, going through maybe 250, and I'm looking at Chloe, sorry, Chloe, I keep using you because you're on the top of my screen, but I'm looking at your resume, right, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, cool, like I like talking to her. I can't remember if she's a junior or a senior, and what is she, a December grad or a spring grad, right? Those things really matter when lining up and figuring out how many spots I have for interviews and what timeline you're on. So please include that. It does go a long way when you're getting shifted in piles from our perspective. Major, minors, great information. You guys did the hard work. Definitely include any and all. GPAs are great, especially if you're proud of that GPA, right? It's great, the talking points to add on. Again, that high school information, not necessarily necessary. Especially as spacing is really hard. Play with your margins, but I highly recommend not including high school. It's kind of a signal to me that you haven't necessarily done as much in college yet. For those of you who are freshmen, I do want to preface, it's okay if you haven't explored all of what Berkeley has to offer and got involved. We don't expect you to have it all figured out. From that perspective, as a freshman, if you have some high school, that's totally understandable. It's more your junior, senior year of looking. I probably would say for that standing to not include your high school information at that point. So just wanted to show you an example at the bottom. You can kind of see that from UC Berkeley, kind of fun things to add in that format. And then putting on leadership on your resume, right? From a business perspective, like I mentioned earlier, leadership, increased responsibility is a great gateway to see, okay, cool. We hire specifically at Gallo to find people that are future leaders and directors for our company to put in our programs. So any college information, I'll show you an example on the next screen. But also I want to note on this page, quantifying as much as possible is a really professional way to set you up for success in the interview and really make you stand out, especially, we'll get into it, but in the details. So for instance, using adjectives like I was appointed a leader of 30 people, right? That's a great quantity that versus saying, oh, I was president of this sorority, because now I know, oh, they were president, they were appointed president, which means they got voted in, right? Or elected. Those are great words that kind of set you up for success, because I noted that so you were personable enough to get the position, people saw potential in you. Again, how many people you oversee, if you want to list those responsibilities in that one liner, great opportunity. If you had a budget from an accounting perspective, how much did you budget? Did you increase the budget? Those type of things are great to add on if you need information. So I wanted to just show you a quick example, because this does come up on an interview question. I love to ask people at the end if I have time. Okay, great. Like at the end, based on this information, is there anything we didn't get to today that you want to highlight off your resume, right? With that being said, you don't have to memorize your resume. A beautiful feature on the online platform is you could have your resume next to you to refer to. I totally would. But again, noting those qualities. So you can see this is the exact same person's resume. We just upped it. It went from good, right? We see that he has increased responsibility. He was class president. He was a finance chair, right? On that first one, that's great info. But on the second one, you can kind of see the level of responsibility had more that was showcased just by changing words and adding more quantities to the details. You can see was a 5,000 pledge, 100,000 budget, right? That's a big deal. So you're really painting a story for a recruiter in your 20 to 30-minute interview slot time, or maybe an hour, and helping them have a firm understanding of what you're doing. And adjectives and quantities are really going to help you get there. So just wanted to leave that there. Any questions at this point so far? Do we feel good about this information, friends? Seeing some head nods. Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling. Muskin asks, do you recommend listing a small description of what would the organization you're involved in does? No, I definitely don't think that, especially as recruiters are probably pretty familiar with your groups. I would more focus on what you individually did. Because even if you were a waitress, saying what you did, like I managed 30 tables, right? Again, in the business world, if you're managing 30 things and you're on top of your business as a waitress or a waiter, customer service, right? Putting those details in an 8-hour time span, those things to me, I'm like, wow, she or he takes his job responsibly, knows his business as a waiter. We see so many of those part-time jobs, but you just described it very well for what you did. And that's why I want to send you to the next round. Not necessarily what your club or organization does. It's what you're doing to make you an individual. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Good question. Thank you for sharing. Okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Great question. Keep them coming if you have any more. So I'm going to keep going, friends. So example 2, athletics. I'm a little biased. I was an athlete, but this could be literally anything, right? From work experience to Greek life to anything that you're doing. So great to see the leadership standouts. You can see so many different aspects to what they do. Also, if you're in an increased role, instead of putting like same level, I want to show you the timeline. Putting like 2017 to 2019 shows that span is very small because, again, I know spacing is hard, but really kind of in a great streamlined way encapsulates what we're trying to do. I love that this person include 20 plus hours a week. That really helps the timeline. Same with waitressing. If you want to add how many hours average, you don't have to be exact, but to reference, that also really helps, right? And I love that it was voted in by the team. That's a great thing versus, oh, I was just captain, right? How did you get to that position? Did you have to run for it? Were you, that's equally great. You were driven. That shows me drive. So just adding those things in really does help, especially to stand out because you can refer to that in the interview process. Great. So after this point, you guys nailed the resume. We feel great after today. We're going to update the quantities, right? And make sure we include all that information. Now the fun part of pursuing a recruiter. So wanted to keep in mind that we just went over the resume information. You are still more than your resume. You will not believe how many interviews I have where the resume is great. People get so caught up in thinking they don't have enough on there. Their resume doesn't speak enough. But remember, friends, especially in the business world, you are more than a piece of paper. So the preparation that you do outside of the resume and the experience, right, is so valuable because I have turned people away that have the best resume in the world. But when we got in front, right, when it comes to game time and action more than words, seeing who they are, that's really what I'm looking for as that final closing. That was not a sentence, final closing area to be able to really perform and see if they're a good culture add to my company. So taking the time to learn the position ahead of time is a big deal, especially in a competitive company. When kids say to me, oh, Nicole, what is Gallo? In the interview, I'm kind of like, okay, this person didn't do their pre-work. Versus saying, hey, Nicole, I looked you up on LinkedIn. I saw that you work for Gallo in these 5 positions, right? That's awesome. Can you tell me more about your district manager experience and the strategic management you got to entail? Love that question, right? Because they did their research ahead of time to learn about a position that I took or a position within my company. They looked us up and gave me a pointed question. That shows me that they have thought and vision and forecasting to possibilities and that they're already hungry enough and driven to look ahead to the future. That's a big thing for me to note. So I recommend whatever company it is, if not mine, others, to really take time to learn that position, ask what the expectations are. We get a lot of what's the hardest day in your life, right? Those are great, but can you be more original in your questions to go deeper and get deep thought answers, because that makes me think about the level of intelligence someone has, and that higher level thinking, which is great, especially coming from the business world if you want to be in strategy, right? So highly recommend that. Asking a question, what does make a successful candidate? Who's been the most successful and why? Great. What made you successful in that role, Nicole? And having that role in mind when you ask questions. I recommend having at least 5 to 10 questions prepared ahead of time, minimum of 3. The worst thing to have happen is when someone says, okay, great. What questions did you come prepared with today, right, Brittany? And then Brittany says, oh, unfortunately, you answered them all. I don't have any. I feel like that's a huge wasted opportunity to learn more about something and see a different vantage point. Because at the end of the day, just like you chose Cal, right? You're about to choose a whole nother family and platform to kind of build your next level of chapter of life in. And so you want to make sure you're doing it and learning as much as you can prior to coming in. Because just as this is an interview for us, it's an opportunity for you to learn more and make sure it's a right fit for you overall, right? And then always that ask and close, just like in a sale in the business world, you want to make sure you're negotiating and networking to understand, great, from here, Nicole, what's the next steps? Like, when can I hear from you again? Will you be on campus next time? Obviously, we can't hand out a business card or shake a hand, right? But you can say, hey, is it okay if I follow you LinkedIn? I would love to stay connected. Can I follow up with your recruiting team or hear from another person on a coffee chat in 2 weeks? You mentioned this, right, in the interview, and I would love to know more from this perspective. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I'd love to get you connected and so and so. And then you have an ongoing relationship with the recruiting team, which I highly recommend. So again, I just want to emphasize following up is great. The ask of what next steps are awesome. I want to break the myth or stereotype that it's like a date with an interviewer and you can't follow up the same day. I highly recommend following up the same day. The fastest, funnest story I have that I actually hired this kid, he walked out of an interview with me and within 10 to 15 seconds, he sent me this very great follow-up email that was very professional. It was like 2 to 3 paragraphs. He had pre-written it, obviously, before going in. He just updated some things. And I was like, Nicole, based on this experience of what we had talked about, totally tailored it, sent it off, fired it. I was so impressed by that. He was an MBA student from Santa Clara, and I was like very highly impressed. I was like, this is great. If he can do follow up this way professionally, imagine what he can do with key contacts in the business world, right? So it does show that level that you're available, and that's just one thing, because some people will take 24 hours, 48, but if you're on top of it, it just action louder than words again with that follow-up time frame stands out and is very memorable in my opinion. So feel free to do that. Connect on LinkedIn. These are all great ways. We get handwritten notes. That does take a longer follow-up time, and there is some forgettability to that. But not opposed if that's something you want to do as a personal touch. No wrong ways. I just highly recommend following up if you gain something from this slide. Okay. Lots of info. So when doing your research, I did mention like preparation is key to standing out in an interview. 3 areas that I recommend focusing on is company, industry, and the interviewers. This is really going to set you apart because people will go surface level, right? We get a lot of information from people restating our mission statement, which we love. Like, Nicole, I noticed that Gallo, right? Like Glassdoor, best place to work 5 years in a row. That's why I like sustainability with your company, first winery certified. Love that they know that. But to go, that's great. That's really great. But to go to incredible and like that 1% better. Hey, Nicole, I noticed that you had an acquisition with Constellations. Are they your second highest competitor, right? Like that information to ask a question in the industry and also know something about our industry, big deal. That means to me that you're pretty bought in and you went a little deeper in that research than most people commonly do on our first webpage, right? Asking questions too. It's okay if you don't know everything about a company, but understanding the difference between if they're public or private. These are great questions to pull from, right? If you don't already know, like, hey, I was trying to figure out, are you public or private, Nicole? I know you guys started in 1933. How does that work? Happy to explain that to you and the benefits of why I think private is great or public, right? That's kind of fun. How's the leadership? How's your CEO? Like, have you ever experienced XYZ? Those are great things to see execution top down in the business world and ask those higher level questions. Also market trends, where you stand up with competition. Is your company you're applying for a startup company, or are they a pretty advanced company that has made a name in the industry, right? So just kind of figuring out, it kind of helps point questions And again, that higher level thinking. I also mentioned the opportunity with the online aspect of researching me on LinkedIn, right? I love when candidates do that. Nicole, I saw that you went to UC Davis and played soccer there. Even questions like that to the interviewer, it just creates a personalization versus talking at someone. And it creates that memory, because interviewers like to be asked that too. And it creates memories in their mind to remember you. It kind of goes both ways in the networking aspect. So I highly recommend that. And then, like I said, 3 to 4 minimum questions. I've had someone show me a binder up to 25. I was not mad about it. I could not answer all those, but you better believe in the notes I was recording, I wrote down, came prepared with 25 questions, because that is something that stood out in that process. So again, it's something that you totally can innovate with, and stand out. And she's like, yeah, I just want to show you, like, I have 25 questions. And I was like, wow, I love how adventurous that is, right? So I just wanted to share you some pro tips that, like, I've seen it all in interviews, and I love to see new things. So keep them coming and think what you can bring to the table in that sense. Okay, a lot of fun information. So just a couple virtual interview tips. Using notes. I get this a lot. Nicole, can I use notes in an interview? Should I not be using notes? Should I only be looking at the little dot on my screen? Totally. In my opinion, this can be very subjective, but I really believe using notes is totally fine. Would I be reading verbatim off of them? No, right? But when it comes to quantities and having integrity with what you're saying, because we totally do follow up and research, at least in my company, what you guys are saying. Like if you say you work 45 hours a week and I talk to your manager and he says you're part-time, right? You just want to make sure that's aligned. So give us honest truth. But yeah, using notes should not be a problem at all. Again, just don't use it too much. I would totally jump on 5 minutes early as well. That timing actually totally matters to me. If you're 2 minutes late and the person ahead of you was 5 minutes early, in the business world, friends, these are really life practices that there are no excuses to it. So I highly recommend like finding the time. Yes, we understand technology things happen, but if you can control the controllables and be prepared and jump on 10 minutes early to make sure it works, I can see when you enter the weight room, right? And I can see that it works. And if something does happen and you're 10 minutes early, sending an email, hi, Nicole, I tried jumping on, I'm having difficulties, please excuse, is there another way we can jump on? So forgiving in that instance. Let's set up another interview time to give you the full amount versus after the fact, Nicole, like I'm trying to get on, it's not working. I swear I've been trying, right? And it just hits home a little differently in the preparation, because to account for errors can come through. So I say 5 to 10 minutes early at all times. And then instead of being like, can you hear me now? Does this work? In the moment, it's kind of a waste of breath, and you want to make sure that you're professionally ready to go on the spot for the pitch, right? Again, making sure interviewers engaged, having those questions ready to go, personality shining here, let it, like whoever you are as a person, being curious and interested, use hand motions, gestures, and like don't feel like you have to be a robot. I think that's really important virtually, because you can move, you can talk, you can get excited. We love to see it, and what makes you you. So I think that's really important. And then again, that follow-up, so great, so key. Okay. Fun stuff. So this is one of my favorite slides. I have 2 siblings in college, and I literally told them to screenshot this when I talked to their universities, because I think it's such a great thing that I wish I had when I was in college. So the biggest thing for those of you that are freshmen, sophomores, you're like, oh my gosh, these are interview questions. For those of you who are juniors and seniors, you probably have seen some of these at some point if you've interviewed. There are a streamline of typical questions in some shape or form that you're going to get asked that you can prepare for ahead of time. The worst feeling from personal Nicole Beauvais experience of interviewing is leaving an interview and thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I wish I answered that question just slightly different. I have a better answer, I swear. You know, that's like one of the worst things to have happen. And we've all been there. Like literally, we've all been there. It takes practice to get interviewing down. But the best way to practice ahead of time is to prepare. So this list of basic interview questions, it might be phrased differently, but these are the core things we're looking for, I'd say across the board in some shape or form. And having an answer that you want to pull from is great. So just like you're writing a paper, right? Take a second to write down your answers to these things ahead of time. And then if you don't love the answer, you want to go a little deeper and quantify things or add the adjectives that make sense or speak to something you want, instead of pulling it out on the spot and improvising, being able to navigate because you know what points you want to hit to put your best foot forward. So for instance, one of my favorite questions to ask people is, tell me about a time where you failed, right? I'm not looking, and I think this is like with acting and a lot of things, people think to themselves, what does Nicole want to hear for her company? What's going to get me through the door, right? I'm giving you a very transparent answer to that, or thought process to this that I see, and I want you to avoid Haas because it's really important. Please be authentic to yourself, because I can totally tell when someone is really trying to give me an answer that I want to hear versus what they really think. Because I get the answer, oh, I think I'm a perfectionist, right? Like, I think that's my biggest failure is I try to be perfect at everything and I'm just such an accomplishment, which like could totally be fair in the truth. But also I'm thinking to myself, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I got a really hard F one time and I thought I killed that test and I absolutely didn't. I studied for 3 weeks and it went terrible, Nicole, in full transparency. But you know what I learned from that situation? I learned the value of XYZ, right? Like I needed to study more. And you know what steps I took to make sure I never had that mistake happen twice? Because I never want to do failure twice in the same area. I started going to study hour and I did this and this. And I met with my professor 3 times a week. And you know what, Nicole? The next test, I didn't get an F. I got a C or a B or an A if you're Cal students, right? So I think that's a big deal because really there's 2 takeaways in a story. One is the direct result of the failure, but 2, I'm also looking for your takeaway and your result that you did to make sure that scenario didn't happen, because I want people to be self-aware enough to admit that they failed and they're aware of their weaknesses and failure and that they can improve it. That's really what we're looking for. And there's no wrong or right answer to it. It's really to see, can you admit your weaknesses, be humble to say them, and then show me how you're working on them. So when you get that question, that's really the angle that my company comes from. And for you to self-reflect and be like, wow, it was way deeper than just tell me a story, right? So focusing there on that, as you can see, each of these really, like, why would a recruiter ask that? Why do you think a recruiter would ask why we should hire you, right? They might probably are a competitive company and they want to see how you pitch, how you give your answer, how bought in are you, how much research you did, right? How can I speak to those things and what would I want to say to stand out, knowing that reasoning behind it? So understanding those things, your self-awareness, so important, and then making specific answers to them so that way you can hit them when called upon and you kind of have your elevator pitch ready to go. Any questions on the slide? I know there's a lot of information. We feeling good? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'll continue, but if you do have anything, let me know. Oh, okay, we got one here. Can we get links to this slide? I think this is all recorded, right, Elizabeth? So I think you'll be good.
Recorded, and we will make sure that this is available to everybody in attendance.
Great. Yeah, Kelly, do you want to come off mute and ask your question on this slide?
Yeah, hi, my name is Kelly. I am an incoming freshman in the MET program, so I will be getting a dual degree in industrial engineering and business.
Cool.
So something that I've heard like quite a bit is I remember you mentioning that like being punctual to virtual interviews, like coming in 10 minutes early should be a positive, but then I've heard on the flip side, it's a negative because it's like, oh, what if there's no waiting room and you accidentally go in when someone else is doing their interview? How do you go about that, especially since I know a lot of companies nowadays are opting to do more virtual interviews?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can answer this for in-person or virtual, especially in the business world. Being earlier is always fall on the ladder, always, because it's also like there is no wrong. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I was early in achieving that, right? Like I came prepared and you guys are finishing an interview. No worries, like I'll hop out, have a great day, right? And knowing your worth in the room, that you're doing the right thing, because that is the right thing to do. It's totally fine. It's just about you being secure enough, knowing like, hey, I'm on top of it, right? Like I'm on top of my game and I'm showing up for this interview. I wouldn't say you need to be 30 minutes early, right? Because they could be doing interviews. Anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes early, totally fine. If someone jumped in and be like, hey, sorry, we're finishing this interview. Okay, no worries. I'll totally wait. I'll talk to you soon, right? And that's it. You don't have to be freaking out on the outside, because you should feel confident knowing that being early is great. Same with in person. If you're there and you're waiting, you just sit outside and like totally get your bearings. I think giving yourself that time too, be very confident going forward with that, because it does mean a lot setting it up. Because as a recruiter, you're like, yeah, I'm like, maybe they jumped in and I interrupted a person, but also I'm noting that Kelly is ready to go, right? That's my impression as a recruiter. It's never the opposite. And with tech errors, that totally, like, yeah, you just don't want to fall on the other end, because it just doesn't benefit you, right? Does that make sense, Kelly?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Of course. And again, companies can be subjective. Some people will be like, no, I want you on the minute. that's okay to ask ahead of time too, getting ready. Sometimes I get kids asking, hey, Nicole, like who will be interviewing me? Can I know my recruiter's name? Love to know a little bit more. One follow-up question, like, thanks again for getting this interview set up. I'm confirming I set my time up. I was just curious, is it appropriate for me to jump on 5 to 10 minutes early? That also shows me you're thinking ahead and you're thinking about the interview, right? If you really want to know where the company stands on that. And if I say, yeah, absolutely, jump on 5, there'll be a wait room, be like, awesome, great. And then you don't even need to question it per company if it's different, right? But you're doing everything ahead of time to set yourself up for success. That's another roundabout way to do that if you're unsure. Does that answer it, Kelly? Sue, is that good for you?
Yeah, that gives me a lot more clarity about the timing.
Cool. Awesome. Great question. Thank you for asking. Ethan, can I answer for you?
Yeah, so I'm also a freshman, and I was wondering with like freshmen applying for like internships, we don't necessarily have a lot of like specific industry experience. So what would be kind of your game plan for standing out in interviews, especially when we're kind of asked or like the things we're applying to are going to be kind of our first experience or we're going to be learning a lot from that experience?
Ethan, thank you for that question so much. I really appreciate it. I want to say I have a solid slide on this. And if I don't, I will totally answer that for you. Is there? Yes. Okay. You literally beat me to the punch on the slide. So I'm going to answer that question with this for you because I think that's such a good call out. So when it comes to selling yourself, like Ethan said, I'm a freshman. I don't have that much experience and I'm a kind of a baby, but I really want to grow, right? So one of my favorite things to hear, address the elephant in the room. Whatever you are applying for, say it's a medical student, right? I'm just giving another example. Or for us in our industry, it's sales experience because we hire for business sales right now. So you could say, hey, you know what, Nicole, I just want to say, if I say, hey, why do you think you deserve this job? And you say, you know what? Well, I don't have sales experience or med experience yet, Nicole. You know what I do have that makes me think that I'm the best quality candidate for this job? I have a really positive attitude. And why I think that's important for you guys is because I'm going to show up every day with a smile on my face and be the best relationship builder in the company or that's aggressive, but you know what I'm saying? Like you can control the controllables. A lot of skills that you already have in your toolbox cannot be taught. So when you're going through them, right? Do I have a positive attitude? Why would that matter to a company? A culture piece, a big culture piece is finding the positive people. I would rather have a positive, hardworking person on my team than necessarily the most experienced person that's negative all day, right? Because we have to look left and right and work with people. And you want to enjoy that experience. And culture, especially at our company with a tenure of 19-year length on average, we want to make sure we're bringing the right people in, right? We spend a lot of money up front investing in you guys. So we want to make sure it's the right individuals. So speaking to your positivity, love that. That makes you stand out, right? Maybe you have people skills. Well, I haven't had sales experience. You know what? I really work well with people in groups. For instance, I was in this class project, and you can say high school because I'm a freshman and I'm only had this much experience, address that elephant, but I worked on a group of 20 people and I found I can really work well with anyone. And we got an A on this project and I was able to communicate well, followed up with the people that were having a hard time, right? Working in groups can be difficult, but I overcame that, Nicole, and I can bring that to the table with your company as well. So I'm like, great, love that, right? Work ethic, persistence, give me your grit story. Well, I may not have sales yet. I know I'm confident I can be successful because anything I put to my mind to, Nicole, I can exceed. And I'll give you an example with my work ethic here, right? I was up at 5 a.m., 7 a.m. I did a part-time job. Whatever you want to tell me about why you have strong work ethic and why you believe that you'll bring that to the table when you get a chance in my company, love it. Self-motivation, drive, those can't be taught, right? I don't want to have to motivate you through incentives. I want to see that already in you. That's very hireable skills. So totally address what you don't have. Well, I may not have a ton of experience through college yet. Just so you know, my reputation of what I've done already through these things, this is what's going to make me successful for you and ultimately why I think I'd be a great hire. Great. Love it. Right, Ethan? That's awesome. Tell me more. So not necessarily the most important thing is what you've done, but also what you've learned, right? So while I may not have experienced that yet, what I've learned through this time is this is totally something I want to experience, right? And like, give me a shot, Nicole, and I'll be incredible because I'm a curious learner. And I think I'd be great because I just never stop learning, hence why I'm at Cal, right? So there's just a lot of fun things. Again, you're more than that resume in finding ways to speak to that and really sell yourself, your character more than what you've done is a great opportunity. It's not always key to have that experience. Did that answer your question, Ethan?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really awesome.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, happy to answer. It's one of my favorite things to hear when people can address that. Don't be shy away from those, because if you think it's a hesitation in a company's mind and you're like, oh, but I'm applying, but I don't know if I'm qualified, address your unqualification off the bat. It's very professional. And then it totally switches the tone of the interview, because now you're in control, telling me your narrative of why you think you'll be great. One of my also favorite things is at the end of an interview to ask the question, is there anything at this time that may be hesitation to you, Nicole, that I can answer for you? And I love that. It's a very challenging question to address, because you have to be ready to pitch and come back with an answer, right? If I'm like, yeah, I'm a little hesitant because I don't see you have a lot of experience. Can you speak to that a little bit more on why you think you'd be good at that? This is your chance to shine and have this pitch ready for yourself, right? So love that question at the end, and like being ready to think through this is a great opportunity. So speaking from a sales background and experience with our company, something we teach all our employees when they come in, and also people that we hire do really well at this. This is called an elevator pitch. So for those of you that have never heard of an elevator pitch, it kind of was formed from the idea of jumping in an elevator. Say you're in Silicon Valley right now, right? You get in the elevator with the CEO of Google, you have a great idea, and you're sitting in there and you're going down. You want to be able, by the time the elevator gets off, to get your point across, get a connection, and get a follow-up opportunity, because you spoke interest in something that had a hook and a grab, and you made a connection point, right? It's very difficult to pull off a successful elevator pitch. It's one of the hardest pitches to do, because you have very limited time. I'd say like 30 seconds. So for me, I loved, as you can tell from this, when I get excited, I talk very fast, and you really want to make sure your points are emphasized. So practice, practice, practice makes perfect. You want to do this with your roommates. You want to do this in a mirror. You want to literally write this out and then verbatim practice it. Because I guarantee you, unless you're Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness, you're not successfully saying this right the first time. So my opportunity for you guys is to really take this home and do your homework and take time to write out these steps. A great elevator pitch is based on 4 things. So the first thing, a quick introduction, which should include your name, the college you graduated from, and the degree, right? And the month that you're graduating. Great. What are you seeking? What do you want? Get to the meat and butter, potatoes of it, right? Why are you going after this experience? What do you have to bring to the table? Why is the proof, again, of why you think you deserve this? And again, you want to close finally with the offer of tying it in a bow of what can you offer the company. So you're really pitching yourself, right? I'd say at Handshake, if you guys, for those of you that have experienced a career fair virtually, you have 10 minutes to connect with someone, right? And a lot of it is quick, fast pace. So you want to hit all of these points. And a lot of people do honestly pretty great at the first 3 on the campuses I recruit at. The hardest one to remember is to tie in with the bow. What can you offer the company? What skills? Why would you be a benefit to the organization? Why would you be an ad? To be able to speak to that is literally like, everyone loves the whipped cream and cherry on top. That like really makes you go from a good elevator pitch to great. And it feels awkward saying it because you're not really asking for it. But when you say it, it's like, oh my gosh, you just connected the dots of what, because I'm thinking the whole time, what can this person bring to the organization? Why would we want to hire them, right? What are they going to bring to the table? If you give me the narrative and the speech in a very strong way of why you're going to do great at this job, if I give it to you and a chance to interview, you better believe it just made my job a lot easier, because you just explained it. I'm like, oh yeah, that does. Yeah, that aligns, right? It helps gauge that. So I highly recommend practicing this. And it really comes down, like you said, there's like examples here to kind of like help you navigate if you want to practice. But for instance, I'll give you a quick elevator pitch from my perspective, just so you can see how it goes. You want to say at a career fair, hi, my name's Nicole Beauvais, right? I graduated from UC Davis 2017 with a degree in economics. I'm really seeking with Gallo Sales Company an opportunity to be a part of their sales leadership development program, because I love working with people, and I really think I have a calling towards the business world due to my time of working on different teams. Since for my past 18 years, I've had a lot of leadership roles in that. Being captain of the soccer team, interning at the sports complex company, right? I did that for 3 years. I'm a really hard worker, and I know the business world is somewhere where I want to thrive in. And I really think this is a great alignment with your company specifically, because Gallo has a legacy for quality wine, and I think I can bring quality individuals to the table and help make Gallo money at the end of the day by leading the organization across their platform. And I'd love the opportunity to manage a team within Gallo to make them successful in their practice, right? So I would love an opportunity from here, Nicole, to learn more about your experience and see you next steps to follow up in this time and answer any questions you have for me. And I'm like, okay, hi, Nicole, right? Like, that's so fun. Let's talk. So just want to give you an example of how quick that can be. That was a little, probably over 30 seconds because I rambled slightly at the end, but it should be quick. It should be simple, right? So just think through that. And I highly recommend looking back on the slide because it is great info. The third thing, I'm giving you a lot of pro tips here and a lot of information, is STAR method. So STAR method. Oh, before I get to STAR method, Kelly, I see that your hand is raised. Can I answer something for you? On the last one?
Sorry, I forgot to unraise it.
Oh, you're good. You're totally good. Cool. Okay. So STAR method, friends, if you guys aren't familiar, is a really great way to navigate and interview questions when you defer to talk. Like, I don't know, if you're like me in one of my first interviews, I felt like I rambled a lot and I felt like I ran out of time in interviews because I like talking. I'm pretty confident at it, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is landing. I'm just going to say a bunch of information and hopefully it's something is sticking that I'm spurting out. STAR method was created to keep you as an interviewer on track and keep on time because you don't want to spend 10 minutes in a 30-minute interview on one question, right? That's not going to get you finished. And while you may have been really thorough at the question, I guarantee you that interviewer probably has 10 to 15 questions to ask you. And they're thinking the whole time, like, we need to keep going to stay on track. I don't know that much about this person. I know he has grit, but I don't know he has XYZ, right? And so you're going to miss out on opportunities to speak, even though you did a great job on that one question. So just like an SAT, like you only finished 20% of the test. So STAR method is really going to help you do that and really explain the situation. So think to yourself, when you hear questions that say, tell me a time, right? Those are what we call behavioral questions. We're asking for you to tell a story to us, right? Tell me a time when you worked in a group and had difficulty working and getting along with your peers and how you handled that situation. Okay, you're asking for a story. A good story, like all of you should know from watching Netflix or movies, should have a beginning, middle, and most importantly, an end. Because no one loves a cliffhanger where you have no idea how the scenario ended. So a key when you hear a recruiter say, and what was that end result, right? That means you forgot the ending. So you want to remember to say the ending in it, what you learned again, what was the direct result, what you took away. So the big things in the beginning, you want to state the situation. So yeah, Nicole, happy to talk through a time I had difficulty with a peer. One situation I had was in my economics class. Again, you want to quantify things. I had to deal with a group of 10 to 15 people, and we were tasked to have a semester-long project. The assignment was for our end quarter grade. It was worth 50% of our grade. So big deal, Nicole. Oh, cool. Tell me more, right? The action I took, and here's the problem. We had difficulty getting one guy motivated to perform the task. So the action I took, hey, I followed up one-on-one. I didn't call him out in the group. I handled it very professionally, in my opinion. Reached out to him, said, can we grab coffee? Just want to see what's going on, how he could help in his workload, what was going on, and get him motivated, what kind of motivation. Found out he was really motivated to get an A and he just got overwhelmed. So helped him kind of organize his life. I love organization. So sat down with his calendar and really looked where we could put time in and helped keep him accountable by checking in on him. And guess what, Nicole? We got an actual A on that project and it all worked out, right? It only took 2 talks to really make that combo stick with him. But happy to follow up. Great end result. And what I also learned from that result was this. So giving 2 results, one the direct and then one what you learned from that situation of that scenario is like a bravo, they killed STAR method and you did really well. It should keep you on task versus like, yeah, let me tell you about all these things and this time, and it should be a couple minute answer. Does that make sense for everyone? So remember, beginning, middle, and end, you want to have STAR set up. Describe the situation, tell me the task that you had, the action you took in the scenario, and the 2 results, direct and also your takeaways. If you failed, great. What would you change next time? If you did great, great. What did you learn from that scenario, right? That really ties home and answers things. I see Elizabeth come on mute. Do you have a question?
Sorry, Nicole, this has been awesome. And I think students, I'm going to echo some of what I've seen already in the chat box. Super, super useful. It's fantastic. And we talked about the elevator pitch of utilizing that during our 13 career fairs that we have scheduled for fall of 2021. Beginning with the consulting one and going on through to the nonprofit and health one in October. We do need to end. For those of you that jumped in, hoping to be on the speed resume, I'm going to log off and then just come back on to the Zoom room. Start promptly at 2:30. Everybody else, just a great round of virtual applause for. I think your information was awesome. And Nicole, I assume you'll have the deck of something we can share with our students. If you can just send it to me and I'll that and the recording. So again, thank you. And for those that just came on for the speed resume, just come back on. I'm going to close this room and then come back on again. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Sorry.